What's up, you guys? It's Levi here. Welcome to the Cybersecurity Education channel. So we got another month, we got another wave of ransomware to talk about today. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 3 ransomware cases in September of 2019. As usual, we got a bunch of ransomware cases. Fortunately this month though, there's not a major ransomware case, so that's good. But we definitely got tough stuff to talk about like usual. So as usual, I'm going to talk about what happened in these ransomware cases. I'm going to talk about my opinion on these ransomware cases, and most importantly, what you guys can learn from these ransomware cases. And these ransomware cases are going to be in different industries. They're all over the world. And I just want you guys to know that ransomware can happen to you, and these ransomware cases that I talk about on a month-to-month basis are perfect examples that ransomware can happen anywhere, no matter where you're at, no matter how small of a place that you live. If you're connected to the internet, you can get ransomware. So go ahead and watch these videos and learn from these situations to help you and whatever organizations you're affiliated with to prevent these ransomware incidents from happening to you. That's my main goal for these videos. I hope you guys really enjoy this content. Alright, so the first ransomware case that I'm going to talk about in this video is in Alabama. 3 hospitals in the DCH health system. They're in Tuscaloosa, Northport, and Fayetteville, and Fayette. If you're from Alabama, go ahead and post down below and tell me if I'm right, or if you're from the Southeast and know how to say that. Did I say this right? Leave a comment down below and tell me how bad I bashed it. Alright, so those 3 cities, the TuscaloosaNews.com reported on October 1st that ransomware had hit the computer systems of these 3 hospitals in the DCH health system in Alabama. The ransomware was caused by phishing. An employee opened up an email and boom, it went and spread throughout the network, and it affected a bunch of systems in these hospitals. Data that was impacted was patient records and things like that. They had to send new patients to other hospitals because they couldn't take in new patients, but current patients, they were able to take care of most of them, and they had to use paper records for them.
Oh my gosh, paper records? People still know how to do that?
I didn't know that people still knew how to write on a piece of paper, so that's good to know. Alright, the FBI was reported to be assisting. No patient data was reported to be lost as of October 1st of 2019. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys, I'll post the link down in the description below like usual. You can check it out. Finally, 5 days later, Tuscaloosa.com posted another article. They said that the ransom had been paid by the hospital. Unfortunately, they didn't say how much it was. I couldn't find it anywhere else either. So that's kind of a shame we don't get to see that. No evidence that patient or employee data was impacted, so that's good. Basically, I think they mean that the data wasn't lost. Obviously, there was a ransom, so it probably encrypted that, but they were able to get that data back, apparently. Non-ER patients were still being sent to other hospitals 5 days later, as the IT department was working on decrypting the systems that were impacted, and then they were also restoring from backups with the backups that they had. And most importantly here, patient care was not compromised, so nobody died or nobody had any symptoms from this or extra issues because of this, at least from what Tuscaloosa.com reported. But before we get moving on to talk further about this, Tuscaloosa, Alabama is impacted here, and I'm really disappointed that the ransomware hit the hospital in Tuscaloosa. It really should have hit the University of Alabama's football program, so that they could have had a few more losses on the season. Because let's face it, they've had way too many wins, and they really need some ransomware on their systems. Just kidding. I don't wish that upon anybody, but if I did, the University of Alabama might be one of the first places I wish, because they are way too good. Oh gosh. sorry to any of you Alabama fans, but the rest of us in the country are getting tired of your team. All right, so what are my thoughts on this situation and what can be learned from this situation? Well, like as I was saying before, fortunately no patients had complications or extra issues from this situation. It could have been a lot worse. Fortunately, the medical equipment didn't have a ransom put on it that would have killed people because of this, or it wasn't hacked and had information changed so that patients were getting too much a dosage of something or not enough of something. So it could have been way worse. No patients died. No patients seemed to have adverse impacts from this. So that's the most important thing. Nobody was hurt from this situation. Obviously, the financial impact is never good, but human lives are most important. So that's a good thing. I'm super disappointed that the ransom was paid. Obviously, this tells me that the hospital didn't have very good backups. If they had to pay the ransom, they should have had a better backup system. Unfortunately, in the hospital environment, I'm guessing that their software and hardware probably isn't up to date either. A lot of the medical equipment costs a lot of money, and they don't generally like to spend money on stuff if they don't have to. Updating stuff can be a pain in the hospital environment because taking things down could cause problems and have downtime for patients, and they don't want to do that. So a lot of the stuff probably isn't up to date either. Another thing is you know, from the first date of the article on October 1st to the 5th, you can see that there was 5 days there where stuff was still down. They were still having to deny patients, new patients, and send them over to other hospitals and only being able to help ER patients. So you can see that ransomware, even after a 5-day period, can still cause a major impact for an organization. And you know, 5 days after, they were still working on trying to recover, you know, even after paying the ransom. So even if you pay the ransom, it can take a long amount of time to recover from ransomware. So ransomware, this just shows that ransomware takes a long time to recover from. As we can see, again, phishing, an employee just opening up an email and running some line of code, running a program, running a macro, clicking on a link can cause a whole hospital to get, I mean, 3 whole hospitals to go down and cause major problems for them. So just the click of an email can cause a big problem. Be careful what you click on. Make sure that you're hovering over those links to make sure that they're going to a legit place that you trust. Make sure that you're only opening attachments from people that you trust and that you expect. And if you're getting attachment from external people, you've got to be extra careful about opening attachments. If you open an attachment that has a macro in it, you know, in Microsoft Excel especially, it'll ask up at the top, hey, do you want to open this macro or do you want to enable this macro? Unless you're 100% sure, don't open that, because a lot of the phishing emails use a macro to execute, and then that executes malware in the background, and boom, the system's affected and it starts spreading and causing things like this. And then, you know, don't open files that look suspicious. Those are some things to learn from this situation. Obviously, the hospitals didn't have good enough backups because they paid for the ransom. So yeah, backups. You or your organization needs to make sure that they're following the 3-2-1 backup strategy that I've talked about up here that you can check out if you're not sure what I'm talking about. You need to have a good offline copy, and you need to be able to recover your data and make sure that your data is getting backed up and have multiple copies of that data. Also, you need to make sure that you're updating your software, your equipment, your hardware, your operating systems, things like that, because if you don't update those, somebody falls for a phishing email, then boom, your stuff's gonna get nailed because it didn't have its security updates. So that's stuff that we can learn from this situation. All right, so the number 2 ransomware case that I have to talk about is a big radio giant, one of the largest radio broadcasting owners in the country. Entercom is how I think you pronounce it. So basically, this information comes from Bleeping Computer on an article from them on September 13th of 2019. I'll post a link in the description below, as always, if you guys want to check it out. But basically, it's one of the largest radio station owners in the United States. They have 235 stations across the country, and they have 170 million plus people that listen to those stations every single month. So quite a giant radio provider. Basically what happened is some computer programmers had their systems infected, and then that spread to the internal systems throughout the company. Silly programmers, they probably downloaded some stupid program to help them program faster or something, and then they got their whole company hit. Basically it impacted share drives, company email, printers, things like that. Also, some radio stations weren't able to stream ads.
Terrible, terrible thing.
Ransomware is good for some things, like not listening to ads. And then some music logs had to be done by hand. Once again, like the hospital thing.
People still know how to write? That's amazing.
I don't know about you, but my handwriting is so terrible, I would be completely worthless in this situation. I might as well just go home if I was a radio person in this situation. Playout systems were not affected, so all of these radio stations were still able to broadcast. They just had some limited functionality. Supposedly $50K was demanded from the ransomware. The attacker was not paid in this situation. The radio station supposedly was able to recover from backups and get back to normal operation. So as you can see, this is an area that we haven't talked about before. We have a big radio giant company that's hit. Not healthcare, not education, not a city government, but a radio company of all places. And a pretty giant one. Having 235 stations and 170 million people listening to them. But unfortunately, the radio station wasn't impacted too bad. They were still able to stream. They probably just lost a little bit of ad revenue. And what we can learn in this situation is they obviously had good backups because they didn't have to pay the ransom, and they were able to restore back to normal operations. It seemed like it was a pretty fast deal for them. So it just goes to show that if you have good backups, it can really save your day and make it a lot less painful. So props to them for likely having good backups or having a good strategy to recover. It just goes to show that backups are the most important thing that you and your organization could do to save your butt in a ransomware situation. All right, and finally, the last ransomware case, I can't hear you, is Dermant, Denmark hearing aid manufacturer. This information comes from ZDNet on September 30th of 2019. Also, I'll put a link down in the description. Basically, Danish media reported that all of the company's infrastructure was hit. Basically, from what I read, most of their IT environment was just completely waylaid by this ransomware. It completely shut the company down, from my understanding. So, a pretty bad case. Created losses of up to $95 million for the company. 14.6 million are supposedly going to be covered by insurance, and only a measly 7.3 million of that are due to recovery and rebuilding all their servers and stuff from the ransomware. So the majority of this 95 million is coming from their ability not to be able to receive supplies to make the hearing aids, and then not to be able to fulfill their orders to send those hearing aids out. So as you can see, the impact to their organization, because it's a manufacturing organization, if they're not making product and sending it out, they're losing money every single day. From what I remember, they didn't pay the ransom, so they had to completely just redo everything, which is crazy because, if they just would have put that 7.3 million into a good backup system, into great employee training, this situation would have never happened, or they wouldn't have been impacted as bad. So that's one thing to learn. You know, if you're a manufacturing organization, or if you're involved in a manufacturing organization, one ransomware incident can take a whole company down and cost tons and tons of money, not just to replace the hardware, but because of lost productivity. So you really have to be serious about cybersecurity if you're in a manufacturing organization, because it can happen to you guys. And also in the situation, it's not just a US company. This company is a company based out of Denmark, so it can happen anywhere, all over the world. It doesn't matter where you're at. Also, one final point I want to make on this is likely the ransomware spread because they probably had outdated hardware, and they probably weren't installing updates on the hardware that they had, or that hardware didn't support updates. One trend that I've noticed in manufacturing is especially for places that are running 24/7, manufacturers don't want to shut down the equipment, because if they shut down the equipment to do updates or to update the equipment, it's going to cost them downtime, and downtime means that they're not going to be producing product, and they're going to be losing money because of that downtime. Well, unfortunately, if you don't do your software updates, you don't do your Windows updates, you don't keep your hardware up to date, stuff like this happens, and it'll end up costing you more in the long run. So make sure that you're getting your stuff up to date. Make sure you're updating your hardware. I know for manufacturing organizations, it might seem like a total waste to be doing these updates, but you're going to save your butt in the long run. So just go out there, get your updates, get your backup systems in place so that you don't have to have a situation like this in manufacturing. Alright, so those are my top 3 ransomware incidents in the month of September of 2019. As you can see, once again this month, 3 different industries, the healthcare industry, we got the radio industry, and we have manufacturing industry with a hearing aid company. And these were all over the world, in Denmark and Alabama, and a radio company that had locations all over the United States. So ransomware can happen to anyone, anywhere, any place, at any time, and you've got to take the precautions that I've been talking about in these ransomware videos so that you don't have this ransomware happen to you. That's my main goal for these videos coming out every month, is so that you guys can learn from these situations and protect yourselves before ransomware happens to you. I hope you guys learned a lot from this. Thank you for watching, guys, and have a great day.